another thing that is happening is that we are waking up to, as we are waking up to our souls, who we truly are. It's really just another name for the same experience. It's just that we've given it that name, human being, and with that attached is a story. The story it's the story, well, it gets more and more and more into detail, of course, but we all have certain things in common on this planet at this time, that we're born at that time. And that's the story that we take on. And from all the stories building out of that first story. And as we are waking up to our soul, we are becoming aware that we are not that story of a human being, but we took ourselves to be that. So now we are waking up to the fact that we are a soul. And we, from the perspective of not the human being, because that's a soul, that's us, but from the perspective of who we think we are, a human being, so that story from that perspective, the soul is something different. It's like, that's what happens after I die. And I don't know what that is, kind of thing. Or, I don't know what people think souls are, as in comparison to them, their souls. I don't know what other people think, but for me it has a lot to do with the heart. That's where I feel the connection. It's a connection of what? I guess I feel something in the middle of my heart, something that is alive. And then from a spiritual standpoint, which is actually a scientific standpoint, but it's not made its way into our official science yet, the mainstream science yet. And there's also, you're not sure, because there's that mainstream science with an agenda behind it that they're just pretending not to know, and where there's like a block of this is as far as we go and no further, because there's an agenda behind it that they don't want from those people that are controlling those institutions, where science is done, where science is, where they have all their instruments and where they get their money from for their experiments and whatnot. But I'm speaking about spirituals, yes, from that point of view, from the spiritual knowing that I have, is that there is that light in the middle of my heart, and where it starts to get light, that is my soul. But also, how should I say this? It is not separate from this body. It's just that this body continues into the soul, and it just starts, the particles start vibrating faster, and it becomes more etheric. Becomes more like a rainbow, maybe, like that, something we can see. And that's how I believe it then continues, the dimensions all the way back through 15th into all that is, all things and no thing, and pure consciousness and all light at the same time. But if I say all light, it's also all dark, all space and time. So there is the body, which is space and time, the universe, and all bodies inside of it, and the body that the universe is inside of. So there's that whole endless loop, endless mirroring like two mirrors in front of each other, and you cannot see how many they are, because you would have to have a camera that could translate that, because your eyes are not able to see. By like pure eyesight, we cannot see at a certain point. We don't see the bacteria that are, for example. But for that, we have these glasses that are this thick, you know. And then we can see. However, what we can see with glasses is not, how should I say, it still depends on how awake your eyes are, how high the body is vibrating, yeah? So, because certain things you cannot see within a certain frequency bandwidth, even when they're there. That's what I call spiritual. When I cross that, what we can see with our own senses, own senses / instruments, because that's just our own senses looking through a magnifying glass. But it's just magnifying what we would see in this density. It's not magnifying what we couldn't see at this density. You couldn't see with a magnifying glass. So that's where our science is officially. So of course, if hard science is all with instruments that are magnifying our own physical abilities right now, then we wouldn't be with magnifying glasses able to see something that is at a higher vibrational bandwidth. So that's why they don't take this into account. However, why they don't take it into account, even though when we go on a journey, or when we want to discover, when we want to know, what is this life, how does it work, who am I, what is this, and why is this, and why is it the way it is? And chances are that that sense of desire might start to grow when it gets really dark and when it gets really, really, really unpleasant, you know, when we suffer. And then when we get out of that suffering, we start to think, well, how can I get better? How can I make it better? Oh, I lost all joy, you know. Wonder why, and that's one reason. That's one reason to have an access into this hunger to know. Yeah. Anyways, that's where we get to the point where, which doesn't play any role here now. Why it is that way for our official science, that this isn't a part of it. So that's why I say, even though it is, you know, because that's what the mainstream scientists are looking at. They're looking at, what is this? Who am I? You know? Well, I think that maybe a lot of them will still have the sense that what is this outside is not also themselves, maybe. Maybe there are still a lot. There's either a lot of scientists that still have that, for it to be that way in mainstream science, that still have that belief that they're separate from the universe, that they're separate from existence, or at least that they belong to a separate collective that's, again, separated from the rest of all the collectives or something. But there is that sense, and maybe they just never had the desire to walk down that road and ask that question. Is it true? You know, is it true? Because on a science, if you keep going in science, not stop where they're stopping. Like if you keep going in frequency, and then what happens is you have It's just from that desire you start to search, and if you have an open mind and you start to search, you have to come into the spiritual. You will come into the higher densities. It's just, what's there to stop you? The only thing to stop you is when you don't have an open mind. When there's maybe a belief there that's very, very, very dense and acts like a black wall, or something that's unsurmountable, and you always bounce back from that. And this is, for example, a huge filter, or a filter of the mind, made out of many, 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 many stories, and they all lead back to the story, I am separate from the universe. And it's like, that's fear. And so I don't go there, I don't go there. No, it's like this. Hard for me to that's hard for me to like imagine what that would be like. But I do believe that that's what's going on. That's what's going on, and I also believe, but I didn't really want to get into that a lot of them they're just happy to have a job and where they can make money, because there are those that want us to not know the truth. Because then we would stop feeding them. Because then we would, because we only feed them with our fear. And if we find out about who we really are, that we are really our soul in this density, which means our soul, like the frozen tips of it, is what we can see. Frozen in space-time, so to speak. Frozen in density. It gets denser and denser and slower of its own body. It vibrates the atoms of its own body. But it doesn't work like this on the, like I'm... It works like it's the aura around. So the aura, like the soul aura, is like the first layer around my body. And it feels itself, to a certain degree, as my body as well. And as my mind as well. Exactly to the same degree as, I don't know about this. Well, it has to be, because it's like one consciousness. It never stops. It never stops from the soul level through the monad, avatar, rishi, back to pure consciousness. Never stops through the dimensions and into infinity, because it's an infinity whole. The core of the sun, the core of the heart, these portals of light, they're portals of light. The sun technically is not a planet, because it's a portal of pure light, and in the middle is that infinity point, that 0 point. It's nowhere and everywhere at the same time, because it is God. Just pure consciousness. Pure consciousness. No thoughts. Just pure light. But it does go into infinity. There's no stopping. There's no stopping. And at the same time, it also goes into eternity, of course. It knows everything. It has the records of every single experience in every single body on every single dimension that has ever in eternity existed. But then those are thoughts. And then the infinity point is, you know, where the light is pure light, where it is the strongest. There is no more thoughts. There's just, as I call it, pure consciousness. Yeah. Or pure awareness. It's only that. Yeah, and when we start to become aware, which means you're aware of all that the five senses can perceive. And if it gets even finer, if you can feel the soul more, the soul can come deeper into your body, and your body is more sensitive to feel the soul, because it starts to recognize intuition. For example, intuition to be recognized, when that becomes a desire, you know, when it happens, you're like, "Ooh, that was intuition. I don't want to forget about it." That's what that feels like, because every time we don't listen and we like don't catch that subtle inkling, because it was instantly overridden by the mind up here, and not the heart mind, because the intuition comes from the soul, so it comes out of the heart. It's not a thought that comes up, that is created up here. Yeah, and then if it's strong enough that we're like, gosh, that was my first thought, why didn't I do it? That then becomes like firing the flame of the desire of wanting to catch it next time, because it's something very valuable, you know. And so that way, with your desire to become more sensitive, to perceive something, it naturally it causes you to focus more. It causes you to pay more attention. It causes you to also be more aware of what you're thinking, or what you're thinking, or that you're thinking, because it's really that you're thinking. It's not coming out of the thinking mind at all. The thinking mind can then store it and use it, you know, for this desire. But the intuition is always original. It's not coming originally from the mind. It's coming originally from the heart, from the soul.